preparing to live stream the meeting. So it looks like it's doing what it's supposed to do. Every time I'm like, okay.
I know, I know. And we're gonna go for what, like 30, 45 minutes
I
if we
think,
need.
yes, that's perfect.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like I can see the Zoom live over here now. So if anyone's watching, we're just testing out our technology and we're excited to get started in a couple of minutes. And the meeting will be recorded, and then the recording of the live stream will be set as a post. But I believe, Christina, you and I are going to, I can download that recording as well, and then you could post it.
That'll be
So,
fantastic. Yes.
yeah.
We'll share
So
with our networks.
let me see. Now, when I did that, I want to get to the part on here where I can see our chat, because that went away. Let me click. I'm just going to click on this. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and there it is. I can see it.
Yay.
So that's but it looks like in my channel doesn't support custom titles. Oh, look, I'm seeing in my Facebook group, um, it doesn't look like it connected, but we're streaming live to LinkedIn and YouTube right now. So
Oh, okay.
that's really good.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I will, let me go to my Facebook group and put the link to the Zoom real fast so that they can access it. This is like real
Oh,
time.
yes, here we are. It's coming through on my LinkedIn too
Is
to
it
join your live video event, and it's us.
like, oh my goodness. Love it. All right, so let me go to Zoom and put the Zoom link in my Facebook group real fast so people can join. Copy. I'm just going to do this and then we'll get going as soon as I
Great.
post that. Yeah, now we won't have to start it so early next time too.
Mm-hmm.
Here we Hold on. In 1 second, I'm going to copy that again because it didn't paste. Right now, watch that and see if anyone hops in. Um, so, all right, it's 12 o'clock on the button. I'm going to hit record. All right, so now we are up and running officially, and I want to thank anyone who's watching. And then again, the replay will be here. But I'm Regina DeAngelis, the owner of Family Transitions, Divorce Coaching, and Mediation. And today I wanted to have a really important conversation with Christina Lindsay, who is, I'll let her introduce herself, but she's a specialist in the domestic violence world as an advocate and a divorce coach. And so many of the women, it's mostly women who come to family transitions, have been struggling with some form of, I think the word is what people would use is abuse. We can characterize it as like subtle manipulation, toxic communication patterns, but I really feel like I want family transitions to be sort of an avenue for education for people, so that they really do feel empowered to understand their situation and understand what paths forward that they might have that can avoid the traditional litigation process as part of a divorce, because that can be so incredibly abusive in and of itself. And that's one of the things I'll have Christina address as well. So, Christina, thank you so much for making the time. Tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Regina. It's been great talking with you over the last couple months. And really kind of advancing the conversation on this really important topic. So I am Christina Lindsay, in-house divorce coach with Merrill Family Law. I am a high conflict divorce coach, certified in that in 2022. I am also a certified domestic violence professional here in the state of Illinois and have done that since 2016. I have worked with survivors in a variety of capacities for the last 2 decades. So I've worked in hospitals, in the legal system. I've done advocacy just on numerous levels in systems. And really found that the common thread that a lot of survivors were experiencing was post-separation abuse. There was just like this lack of information, this lack of advocacy, and it was really painful watching the struggles that a lot of my clients went through with their children and just wanting a safe life and not having the court system recognize that. So it's,
What
pretty pervasive.
Yeah, and describe a little bit for us the two things that I wanted you to talk about that I think, and I'm not a clinician, I'm not a therapist, but when I listen to clients and, people come to us for initial consults, when they're describing what they're experiencing at the start of the divorce process, I think today a lot of people would describe that as coercive control, gaslighting. So I
Mhm.
want you to kind of describe both ends of the spectrum. Like, what does coercive control look like within a marriage? I'm sure it looks like lots of different things, but give us a couple of examples and a kind of general definition. And then also, what does post separation or post divorce abuse look like?
Mhm.
We're getting both ends of that spectrum.
Right. So, when I'm thinking about coercive control, it is under the umbrella of domestic abuse. I think it's a easier term for people to reach towards because it can be really hard for someone to identify as an abuse survivor. That's not something a lot of people want to take on or feel comfortable in, and depending on where they are in the journey. So, really, when I think of coercive control, it's similar to domestic abuse, where a person is using their power and control over another person to cause harm. What we're seeing is a pattern of behavior, and specifically with coercive control, we're not necessarily talking about physical abuse. So it's more insidious, and it can appear in ways such as gaslighting, manipulation, really instilling a fear in someone that invades every aspect of their life. And we can look at some different examples of that.
Right.
And then when I flip it to, post-separation abuse, coercive control is part of that power and control wheel. So in the domestic violence field, we have power and control wheels that kind of break down different forms of abuse. And when I look at the power and control wheel for post-separation abuse, coercive control is right in there. It's part and parcel of it. And so some other things that appear with post-separation abuse specifically, I really want to highlight financial abuse. I mean, it's so pervasive, and really can show up in a variety of ways. We see, maybe somebody's not paying child support, not following a court order, depleting the marital funds, and so someone has no access to money. And so those are really common ways that we see that appear.
That's one of the things that's so frustrating for me. When I was even doing my old life as a traditional attorney, there was no urgency in the system. I think you and I have
Mhm.
talked about this a little bit.
Mhm.
The things that's so upsetting in terms of post separation divorce or post separation abuse or even abuse during the divorce process is that the abusive spouse can use the process itself to further inflict damage,
Right.
or as I used to say, there's no consequences for bad behavior, so they
Right.
could like not pay child support, and the court's like, oh well, people don't pay child support, schedule a hearing, and the hearing is 8 or 12 weeks away, right?
Right. And
No.
meanwhile, how do you pay your mortgage? How do you pay the utilities? What about daycare? Like it's
Yeah.
honestly so impactful to somebody's life. And we know that people stay in abusive relationships because of the financial piece of it. It's the number one reason someone may leave and then return because
Right.
it's so incredibly difficult. And so also another thing that pops up under the financial abuse piece would be somebody interfering with someone's employment. So let's say they're supposed to watch the kids and then, oh, can't do it. Suddenly there's no childcare and you're late for work and it, can impact your employment. So there's a variety of ways that we see financial abuse like go through someone's relationship.
Yeah, that's fascinating, actually. And like thinking about it that way, that they can kind of subtly undercut you and your ability to kind of be on a level playing field or a
Yeah.
level solid ground, really. Um,
Mhm.
and that, is something that a lot of women I know struggle with. The co-parenting after the divorce. Do you have, in a circumstance like that, for example, are there is there anything sort of at first blush that a woman could do? And I know it doesn't need to be a woman, but a woman or a man in that situation could do to try and take control a little bit of the situation.
I think what also happens in post-separation abuse and in general in an abusive relationship is isolation. So that can be cutting somebody off from their community, from family, from friends, threatening to spread rumors within, let's say, your church group or your cultural community. And so what we see is that support system just whittled down. So in those situations where there is some financial abuse that's happening, I think let's take a look at that support system that they have. Let's see who's available, who is willing to help you plug the gaps. It's okay to ask for help. And I think the shame piece that is often just a layer that is so hard for a survivor to move past is something to work through. And that can be done with a therapist. It can be done with, an advocate, or a coach like myself who's actually trained in working with survivors of domestic abuse.
Do you find that, and this was true in my particular circumstance as well, like I never thought of myself, I didn't know that what I was experiencing
Yeah,
actually classified as
yeah,
domestic abuse. I sure as heck know that my ex-spouse would never have considered himself abusive in any way,
right.
like just his
Mm-hmm.
personality or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the marriage counselor who said in front of him, like, this is not okay, right? Like this. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time I didn't feel shame, but I felt almost embarrassment that I hadn't realized it,
Right.
especially because I was a divorce attorney and I
Mm-hmm.
well knew and used to explain to women who were in physically violent situations
Mm-hmm.
the cycle that you described, like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
there's this explosion, and then that I forget the names of all the phases, like the honeymoon
The
phase with
honeymoon period, and then walking on eggshells, and then the explosive event, and then yeah. Mm-hmm.
play. And so I used to describe that to women who would say, like, oh, he's really trying, and I think we're good now, or whatever. And when the marriage counselor described that to us, and then she said, well, you're on eggshells all the time. You're afraid. You're trying to avoid that
Right.
explosion. I was like, oh my gosh. But then I realized, and so much more about my life made sense at that point. But I do think there's a lot of women who don't realize that what they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing isn't sort of within the realm of normal for any relationship.
Right.
And
Yeah. I
so
think that that's classic. I think that, you know, it just speaks to so many people's experiences. It doesn't matter who you are. Domestic abuse can reach you. It doesn't discriminate, honestly. And so you have educated women, highly successful, vibrant, women who are active in their community, who are fantastic mothers and these fantastic people, often very empathetic and, become unfortunately subjected to this type of abuse from a partner. And it's not like you meet someone and you shake their hand and they're like, I'm abusive, let's get married. It's a slow build for a lot of people.
I think
And
that's
so, mhm,
really key too. And I say this a lot to women who feel such guilt in kind of leaving their relationships. They feel like they're throwing in the towel, or their spouse has flat out said, if you leave, you are giving up on us. You are breaking up the family. And I the guilt, I think, comes from their memory. Again, I'm not a therapist, but this is sort of my
Yeah.
experience and how this played out in my life. Like the memory of what was,
Hmm.
or kind of belief. So many women say, like, oh no, I know he has a good heart. You can see kind of beneath that.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of guilt in kind of giving up on them. And so I don't
Right.
know if that's like a people pleaser type trait for women, but I think that's a lot of women come from that place emotionally and mentally. Do you see that?
Hmm.
They feel like
Yeah,
guilty.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, grief is part and parcel to this process, especially when divorcing or, separating in any way. And that has to be honored. There has to be space for that. And I think, the whole idea, oh, he hurt you, leave him instantly. I mean, it's very few people who actually do that. I think having understanding of the dynamics. And, I've even had a client who, their abusive ex-partner was killed.
Oh, wow.
And so that person called me and let me know what happened, is like, I'm safe now. I wanted you to know.
Oh my
And
God.
we cried together because it was this loss of life too. Like, everything is complicated. Human dynamics are complicated. And that those complexities, I think, can be ignored by the court system. They can be ignored in general public when we're talking about abuse. And there's just so many layers. And I understand that and can work with my client in why they may have normalized the abuse. It's a survival technique. It's resiliency too.
Right.
It's also then the hope that maybe things will get better, maybe there will be some change. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's totally
Right.
natural.
And I think most people do that until there's something that happens that they know, okay, that was the absolute last straw. I always describe it as the phone call to reach out to me, and I'm sure to anyone at your firm or to you, is the phone call of absolute last resort. People don't want to, dismantle their families, go through the divorce process unless they know that they have absolutely no choice. And most of our clients come to us saying, like, we've tried everything, or he won't go to therapy. And I have been down this road. It's
Yeah.
always more than once. Nobody does anything after the first time. And
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
completely understandable. So I tried to soften the approach. And that was going to be my next question for you too, in terms of telling people who now want to kind of figure out how to untangle their marriage, right? Like, so
Hmm.
the topic for today is like navigating divorce when there's been a history of abuse.
Hmm.
What if you could get someone before they told their spouse that they wanted
Hmm.
to move forward? What tips would you give them for that?
Yeah, I love that because I think we have a couple pieces here. It's like 100% educating yourself. So, you know, read the books, look at the information, gather the data that works for you, and then assemble your team. Really think about what that looks like. I had a consult call the other day with somebody who's like, I'm in this contemplation phase. I'm scared to retain, and then we just have to go. And it's like,
Right?
no, we don't. It's like it allows you, there's time to prepare. So
Yes.
have those conversations, figure out who's going to be a good fit for you. Think about if you do want a divorce coach. If abuse is happening, very important that you are selecting an attorney who understands high conflict divorce. If you think your ex or soon to be ex would be high conflict or would cause any kind of chaos for you. And then think about having a coach too to help guide you. That can be a great part of the team. And your therapist is really there for you to help process the past and process those emotions. The coach is really there to focus forward.
Yes, that's exactly how I describe it with couples that come through family transitions. Like we are
Mhm.
therapists. Obviously, you've got grief issues, you've got
Right.
communication issues, um, all sorts of resentment issues, things from your past that, or you wouldn't be clients of ours, but we can pick you up where you are and
Mhm.
forward and give you tools to navigate co-parenting more calmly, to set boundaries that allow healing to happen. But a lot of times, I think one of the things that people find attractive about family transitions is exactly what you just said there at the beginning. Like people are reluctant. They delay and delay and delay because typically starting the process means retaining an attorney, and then they sort of lose control to that process, right? And
Right.
so kind of like everything is then chaos out of the gate. And I have found for sure that if someone comes to me and they say they've had their spouse has narcissistic tendencies or
Mhm.
is a narcissist, I hear that all the time. And then I can say, well, I think typically starting a divorce the traditional way with that personality type is really going to inflame the situation immediately. And because
Mhm.
of that, I tell both couples then, like, so then I are both parties that, hey, we do this upside down. When you hire us, we just help you start figuring things out for the future. Like, what's your time frame for when you might
Mhm.
be in two houses? And
Mhm.
we tell them to think of the sessions as like brainstorming, problem solving sessions, as opposed to any sort of formal kind of like mediation structure, because we want to keep it relaxed and conversational. And
Right.
that allows the situation, like the person who would be on the defense,
Mhm.
to be a little bit more responsive to the process, because it is so scary to like retain attorneys and
Mhm.
file paperwork. And so we
Mhm.
say, hey, we're going to figure all this out. And then once it's all done, then we will file the paperwork and it
Right.
becomes purely like a procedural paperwork issue at the court. So they don't
Right.
have the threat of that litigation. Um,
Mhm.
so that's been helpful. And that's when you, in terms of the avoiding the fight or flight response, um,
Mhm.
is that one of the things that you find is kind of key? And I always feel like the woman is going to take this the wrong way. But so often I have to say to them, he's not going to change his behavior. Like we have to help you learn how to navigate so that he's not harming you anymore, which feels
Mhm.
backwards. But I
Mhm.
don't find that there's any protection in the system. So the best thing that we can do sometimes is help her have
Right.
tools to navigate.
Yeah, I think the way I look at it, it's someone taking their power back and taking
Right.
back control. So we really can't control any other human being. We can't control the weather, the outcomes, like all of these different things. And the system is so difficult because it's set up in a way where it's, you know, litigating the most intimate parts of your life, your children, your finances, your future, it feels like, right? So, what can we do to take power back? And that will be strategic, that will be developing boundaries. And as a coach, I help keep my clients accountable to their boundaries that we've set. I help with correspondence with their ex. I like to say I'm the secret sauce or the secret weapon. Like, no one has to know you're working with me, but I
Great.
can help kind of streamline things. And one of the things I love about working in-house, which is really special, I think I'm the only one of two in the entire nation who's an in-house divorce coach. Um, so being able to kind of offer that seamless process with their attorneys is really fantastic. And then also we have coaching only where someone can come and just put some money into a retainer and we can coach and kind of work through that contemplation stage or work through if it's post separation anything or post decree, we can work through those things. And then there's some attorneys in the background should we need to pull them in, or if they are ready, we're
Yeah.
ready to go. But it's giving people options for support. Like this is one of the most difficult things to go through. And
Yeah.
there's so much hope out there. There's so much good that can come for someone's life. it can develop into something really wonderful.
Yeah, that's what I've learned, which first of all, I love that you are in-house because that is absolutely unheard of, certainly on the East Coast where I am, and I find that even in Pennsylvania, the divorce attorneys, we don't have a collaborative law process that's formalized in any way in our
Hmm.
statutes. And so the lawyers are not even always responsive to and supportive of mediation at
Mm,
all. Like it's kind
mm,
this is the process, and certainly not divorce coaching, but
right.
I think it shows so much that your firm was willing to bring you in-house and that recognizing that people going through divorce need really holistic, it's emotional and logistical support as well as the legal guidance of like how to navigate the system. But
Hmm.
there's more and more avenues to get that support that would allow people to avoid just going through, traditional.
Right. And like you and I talk about, whether it's with mediation or including coaching in the process, it's really saving people money at the end of the day. Like a
Yes,
retainer can be drained so quickly. Um, I
exactly.
really help people discern what's important to raise up to the attorneys
Yeah.
and what can we work out together. And then the idea is that they get their sea legs and then they're off and they don't need help. And maybe they come back if it's an emergency or something like that. But
Yes, there's sea legs. Like family transitions is structured so that there's like a weekly support call, and so
mhm,
do that call, and people submit questions anonymously. But what I tell all my clients is, hey, at the beginning of the process, when you're first getting started, you're going to be using those calls. You're going to be using our education materials, but then people literally get their sea legs and they start to
yes.
feel more confident. They understand that, hey, that they have a vision for what their future can be and the right support they can totally get there. And so
Hmm.
it's kind of cool to see people sort of evolve through the process
Yes.
and get
It's so
stronger.
special, honestly. I've had clients when we first started, it's like you can feel the weight and the just like the shadow that
Yeah.
and the burden they're carrying. And then just by kind of reframing things, setting goals, obviously the case moving along, but having support too with parenting, I think that that's really essential. I'm a mom. I understand parenting and like the things that come up with it.
Yeah.
And I think being able to have like a sounding board for that, feel validated, develop strategies to give your children agency. Because for a lot of people that we're kind of talking about today that may be experiencing some type of coercive control, they're afraid of leaving because what happens to the kids? The kids
Yeah.
then are going to have this unsupervised time with this narcissistic individual. What do you do? And so
Right.
that kind of agency and being able to know like what strategies, what do you document, how do you safeguard against false allegations of parental alienation, all of those things are super critical.
It's so hard. And that's one of the hardest things to navigate, I think, because especially depending on how young your children are. But I have clients, and who the kids will say things like, oh, well, you can't get my sneakers because dad gives you all his money. Like that's the sort of thing where, I mean, I guess the kid could be assuming that, but the assumption is that dad has said something along those lines, like, oh, your mom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so in Pennsylvania, that's the most frustrating sort of manipulation when it comes through the kids that way,
Yeah.
because our courts really, first of all, then the mom's like, what do I do? Drag my kid into court? I don't want to do that. Like it becomes this quagmire for the parents of really like trying to empower the person on the receiving end of that comment to
Mhm.
have an honest conversation with the child that doesn't make the situation worse, doesn't,
Right.
so those sorts of tools are fabulous for you, the
Yeah.
resources you provide for people
Right.
is
I think they're essential because it really is like for most protective parents, the most important thing in your life is your children. And so it makes sense that, of course, that's going to be your number one concern as you try to figure out how to
right.
navigate this. And it's okay to ask for support. You're not going to know how to do it in a system that just really doesn't want to deal with any abuse. I mean, I've seen orders of protection denied for firearms involved. I've seen in family court or, severe abuse and abuse of a kid too is oftentimes ignored or blamed on the protective parent. Like, oh, you made that up.
Right.
They're feeding lies. And that's
You're
just not true
reading. Right.
in a
I
lot of cases, not every case, but most cases, right?
Part of why I started family transitions is because I was so defeated and frustrated of feeling like I went into family law because I really wanted to help people and knowing that the system is so cookie cutter and that they don't want to deal with anything that might be a little bit complicated or
Mm-hmm.
require them to dive a little bit deeper, like peel back
Mm-hmm.
the layers of the onion. And
Mm-hmm.
used to have to say to people, I am so sorry, but nobody is going to care. Like, yeah, and we don't want to waste your money. I
Right.
would say, especially in custody court, you can't run into court the first time something happens. We need to give them, we used to say, enough rope to hang themselves. You need to
Mm-hmm.
wait until there's 6 months of you documenting weird things that your kid has said or inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
things, or,
Mm-hmm.
him not showing up to pick them up or whatever. But to tell someone who's really struggling, I'm sorry, I can't help you for 6 months is
Right.
incredibly, and then I can't guarantee that anything's going to happen when I do take your
Right.
money, drag you through
Right.
the court
Yeah.
system. So
Yeah. I think every advocate, you get so just bogged down by having to say goodbye to your client and not knowing if they're going to live because they might get killed, or their children might get killed. And that's just a reality. Like scanning the Tribune, the Chicago Tribune, I'm like, oh, great, another murder suicide. This is terrifying, holding
yes,
my breath. And I think similar to you, that's why I left the legal system. I moved to a hospital system, which was difficult work, but a little different.
yeah,
And then I moved on to, I found this and I was like, this is a way I can advocate for people and I can provide information to people and safety plan with people in these situations. And similar now, I'll say to people, I see you, I validate this. The system doesn't care about that though. Like we have to figure out how to pick and choose to
right.
highlight to the GAL, this is what's important, to highlight to the judge, this is what is happening and it's untenable, versus like every other thing that I see that's coercive control that's insidious and
Yeah,
is not going to even be able to be proved in court.
right.
So
That's why I think what you said, like giving it, and I love the way you rephrase that. It's like empowering people to take back their control. It's not, telling them, oh, I'm sorry, you have to change your behavior. It's really more about empowering them to take back control in this situation
yeah.
because no one is going to help them in any kind of meaningful way. Like there's no long-term consequences. And I think you and I had even talked about the parenting apps like Our Family Wizard and things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
My experience is that that's a complete waste of time in most cases. One of the ways I've seen people use that in an abusive way is by not responding to the messages or saying, oh, they didn't have their notifications turned on, so they didn't see the text messages, so and that is set up so that the courts are supposed to be able to monitor that communication,
Mm-hmm.
but the courts just actually don't. And around here, I think it's a time thing. Like the courts,
Yeah.
they're so bogged down, they don't have the resources to give to each case. And when you go into custody court, you're allotted 45 minutes at the most to kind of set out everything that's happening. And you're one of 4 or 5 cases that hearing officer is going to have that day. So it's really, I think, the best avenue, and you can correct me or tell me if you disagree. I have found such satisfaction in helping people through the process, avoiding opening the door of, abuse by litigation, by
Mm-hmm.
keeping them away from the litigation process completely. If obviously you can do it safely, thank God, like I don't have physically abusive situations in my client base. And obviously, those people I would send to PFA court immediately, but
Mm-hmm.
with unknown sort of results. But
Mm-hmm.
do you find that it's possible, or do you give people tips about, okay, if you want to try mediation, what's important from your perspective for them to do? Because so many people would say, oh, you can't mediate in a situation where there's any sort of abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I think that comes from too, like the idea of the power dynamic. So like as a DV advocate, we would never recommend couples counseling, for example, because that's just going to re-traumatize somebody. So I think there's that kind of protective feeling when it comes to mediation. However, in Illinois, at least you have to go at some, like that's the first stop after you file. You have to go
To
sit
media.
down at mediation, and you can do it in separate rooms. You can have your attorney present. So there's ways to kind of work around when there is abuse. I think if you do have, like family transitions, you have somebody like you who is aware of the dynamics, and you might have someone confiding in you and disclosing to you, you have some knowledge on how to handle that. And so that's different than any old mediation company.
That is true. That's what I want to ask you. So let me go back to like what you just said about the court ordered mediation after you file. In Pennsylvania, they only have that for the custody statute. If you
Mm.
file for divorce, you're kind of just kind of like your two attorneys start hashing it out, or somebody will
Oh,
file
okay.
a petition. But so if a couple, how does that work? Are they required to do 1 hour? Are they required to do 3 hours? What happens with
Sure,
that?
yeah, I'm not sure the exact amount of time. I'm more there, like the attorneys handle that. I'm more there to help somebody get in the right mindset for it.
Gotcha.
What are some strategies you can do to feel as empowered as you can? Because oftentimes the clients that I'll get who have already gone through that, and maybe they agreed to something they didn't want to, they oftentimes can feel that power dynamic, that
Yeah.
it's off, and the pressure and everything like that. And oftentimes, in those situations it doesn't work. We do have people who come to us, maybe who used a different company, where maybe they've got everything kind of laid out nicely, and it can help the process like reach a settlement a lot easier, for sure,
Yeah.
than going through litigation.
One of the big issues, and I do safeguard this within our sessions, is that feeling of pressure to agree to something, and
Yeah.
also agreeing in a vacuum. I say to people, you cannot negotiate in a vacuum. Like, it's really important for us to help people avoid lawyers by giving them that education piece. So we need to make sure that the husband understands, like, oh, here's what alimony would look like if she had an attorney. Here's what they're going to ask for. Here's what
Hmm.
asset distribution would look like if you guys were fighting it out in court. But then the woman, again, it's usually the woman who's in that lower place of power, feels more confident. But I also want them to consider it like, hey, we're data collecting, brainstorming. At the end of the session, we'll have all your notes. You guys need to go like review them all, think it through, and really get comfortable with it. Um, because I don't, to your point about the re-traumatizing, like you need to give people the space to process without feeling under attack. Like give people time to have their nervous system sort of relax a little bit
Hmm.
or a lot, and then think through from a place of more calm. And that's
Right.
like one of, I think, the downfalls with traditional mediation, especially if it's court ordered and you only get that 1 hour. Like our
Mhm.
custody mediation is you're required to go one time for 1 hour. And that's
Wow.
not
Okay.
super realistic to wrap up everyone's, parenting
Yes,
plan in 1 hour.
absolutely. Yeah, in an hour, your
Yeah,
whole all of the pieces of your life there.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like let's see what we could like plow through. So, but it's that I think the education piece and having someone like you in the background. So if someone doesn't want to like kind of lawyer up, but they want to try mediation, they're concerned about the domestic abuse piece, and typically it would be the coercive control piece that we're
Hmm.
worried about. Someone like you in the background is perfect for that person to feel confident to at least try.
Hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think to feel empowered, and again, it's about team build. Like what kind of team do you have? Are you feeling, confident in this process, and that at least if it didn't work, you've given it your full effort in a way where you had agency and had the tools and knowledge available to you that anyone should have.
Yes. I find that often it does work. And again,
Right.
disagree with me, but And I don't know if this is like, I don't even know what the word would be, politically correct or if, but the reason it works for family transitions so often, I think, is because we are very aware of keeping that conversational tone so that
Hmm.
and only looking forward. If you allow the clients to say anything or to rehash anything in the past, the
Hmm.
abuser is going to go on like super high alert and go on the attack. And that's that like biological response. And I think you probably certainly understand it. A lot of therapists understand what that kind of mechanism is. But by keeping the conversation forward thinking and allowing the conversation then to be more calm, we are able to successfully get through an entire mediation. And the part that I am going to say was maybe is not politically correct. I think that so often when you're dealing with someone with an abusive sort of personality, they are very invested in looking like the good guy or
Hmm.
certainly not letting the outside world see that side of them.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
that I have found works to our advantage, or at least works to help facilitate the mediation process. Because where you would think, oh, I'm going to be under attack in a session, they are typically very cordial, very calm, very agreeable because
Right.
they often want to play that victim card and have it
Hmm.
be like, well, she's wanting this. So,
Right. It's like the Jekyll and Hyde, and it doesn't matter if there's physical abuse or not, if it is coercive control. And a lot of narcissists too, if somebody is narcissistic, they have an obsession with status and how they look in the community
yes,
and what's going to be said about them. And let's get this over quick and simple. And then what you might see is, that post-separation abuse still rev up where the co-parenting is difficult or communications. And that's again where a divorce coach,
yes.
especially a high conflict one, can help kind of sort through.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, because that's one of the things too. We say like, hey, people are always concerned about, you don't want to be like fodder for the neighborhood gossip.
Right.
So by doing it this way, to both spouses can really hold their head high. And
Hmm.
not like it's not manipulation of the other person. It's really true. Like you both should be proud of yourself for conducting it this way, for not letting yourselves be dragged through this adversarial, contentious process, even though
Right.
that might be everybody's first instinct is to defend themselves. It's just a matter to what degree. And but what we say in family transitions is, hey, the sessions stay calm. We really quantify the dollars. We help you guys quantify and put in place an operating system so you're not having to text every day. You know what the expectations are for around parenting, and once we sign it, then at least you do have the protection of a legally enforceable contract, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And but the ongoing co-parenting support or the support that you offer in sort of this,
Hmm.
if you're recovering from a high conflict situation, could be
Right.
absolutely like
Yeah.
measurably valuable.
I think so. And I see it with my clients. And I think, it just makes sense that like I've talked to you, I've been talking to a lot of people in the divorce field in different capacities. And I think it just makes sense with the way the system really isn't designed to handle these situations. They don't
Right.
want to see it. There's not training there. It's not of interest. It's, push it to the side and let's do this cookie cutter thing. And I think it just makes sense that I'm in house now, that there's family transitions, there's these new ways to try to do things and get a desired outcome
Right.
that's going to be safe for people and fair.
Right. And I think that that's what you're doing and what your firm is doing and what I am doing is sort of a response to a recognition that, it's hard to change a system. And I think we are many, many, many years from the ability to revamp our family law process in any sort of meaningful way. And
Right.
different states have different sort of procedures, but essentially they are all the same. Like when you start the divorce process, you're having to now call your spouse the respondent or the defendant, right? Like they are, like it's literally me versus you. And I
Hmm.
we understand that that's doesn't make sense in the context of families and family
Right.
systems and having kids where you actually do have to have hopefully some ability to continue to work together as a team for
Hmm.
kids. And I have clients who are grandparents, and I'm like, you don't want your grown children being stressed out about their kid's first birthday party because the two of you can't be together. Like,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
try
Hmm.
and fix that sort of generational trauma that can come from an abusive situation and a traditional toxic divorce process.
Hmm.
So I think the world is starting to recognize is really important.
Yeah, and I have to give credit to all of just the advocacy works of the different groups that are out there of protective parents who are working to pass legislation after, horrible outcomes where children have been killed and, protective parents have been killed. And I think, there is just such a loss that happens. That's a reality of the defects in that system and just the lack of recognition of abuse. And I think for people who are dealing with that coercive control where you can't prove it in court, it's super difficult. And the person is high conflict and super smart about how they go about it, just skirting right under everything where you can't call the police and you feel like you can't get support. There is support out there, and find a high conflict divorce coach, find someone to help you, safety plan with an advocate, and everybody deserves support, honestly.
Right. And it's so, I feel like in like heartening to know that those resources are out there and
Yeah.
it's just talking to people, asking questions and, turning over one rock after the next, you will get the support you need. And so
Mhm.
to that end, how can people find you?
Mhm.
I didn't put your contact info in the comments, but I will.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm at Merrill Family Law, and somebody could find me on LinkedIn. They could find me on Instagram, Divorce Coach Christina, or reach out to our firm through the website. There's a whole way to be able to contact me through there. But yeah, if you want to put my contact details in the chat, I am open just for coaching only. And then, of course, there is coaching in conjunction with our legal team, which we opened an office in Michigan too. So I
Ooh,
can help clients anywhere in the nation. I've had clients in a lot of different states. So
awesome.
I'm
So
here
they
for you.
are able, like, so you work in-house, but then you also can do individual coaching anywhere in the country,
Correct. Yes.
if they're not clients of the firm.
Right.
Okay, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
that's what I thank you so much for your time today. I'll start like wrapping us up and figuring out how to post it now, and get up. But I really appreciate your what you do, first of all, because it's so important. And I appreciate your time because I think the people that work with me and the people in my world here, this education and information is really invaluable to them to feeling more confident about, moving forward. And there is life, there is a next chapter for them.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic.
You're welcome. I'm going to stop the recording and then don't go anywhere yet. I'll
Okay.
stop it. So funny. All right. So it's going to take a minute for it to upload and
Okay.
then we'll like see. I have to check my Facebook and see if people are freaking out. No, it seems like all is well. So I'm going to post the video. I'll send you the video as a Google
Okay.
Doc file. Does that work?
That's perfect.
Okay. And then you can post it wherever you want, and I'll post it lots of places
So
too.
will it have your details too? Like I can so that
Yeah,
I can say, oh, family transitions on there? Yeah.
I don't
It'll say,
know.
I don't,
I know.
I
You,
will ask our marketing guy. He'll know what to do.
okay, perfect. Yeah, see, I don't have
Yeah.
a person. I'm the marketing person. It stresses
Yeah, I know. That
me.
used to be me when I had
I'm
my
the
private
person.
practice.
It is
Um,
crazy. I do. That's empowering too. And people are like, I don't know how you created a client portal on your website. I'm like, yeah, I had to go to Wix and like get on the phone and like, but, and
yeah,
even then,
that's great.
it
I
looks
think
like
it's
it worked.
awesome.
Well, I have to call Restream because it did not work um, to go live in my group, it doesn't look like,
Okay.
because it says unable to connect. And I paid like extra, like I had to upgrade the platform so it
Oh
would,
no.
so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
hope it works. Let me see.
let me
Oh,
end this. Oh, we're still, hold on, I ended the recording, but let me end the live stream. I don't know how to end it,
oh,
so.
weird.